from the ATO and hostility area. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. On September 24th, the President of Ukraine's decree has introduced the decision of NSA about the necessary measures in Ukraine aimed at strengthening its defense capacity. In line with this decision, the major strategic pillar of the state policy in national defense is to ensure readiness in the security area and readiness of economics and society to reject and reflect military aggression. In November, the President will send special address to the Verkhovna Rada, defining new national security strategy of Ukraine. In line with this decree, the Cabinet of Ministers has to take the following measures to change the extra bloc status of Ukraine, impose economic limitations and sanctions on the Russian Federation, and develop directives on the negotiations with Russian side to close checkpoints at the border with Russian Federation and demarcate the border to resolve the issues of material supplies and material provision of the Ukrainian military. The Cabinet of Ministers also has to set major indicators for the state military orders and procurements, provide necessary changes in budget and financial policy, and provide a new version of the military doctrine of Ukraine. It has also to establish national center on counteraction to the cyber crime and cyber threat. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine is assigned to seek military support from our allies abroad. During the meeting of President Poroshenko with the G7 leaders and the European leaders, they follow the further actions and coordination of efforts in the international scene was described. The President mentioned that the improvement of dynamics is to comply with the agreements with both sides and a bilateral regime of ceasefire and withdrawal of Russian military, liberation of hostages and control over Russian-Ukrainian border, and also installation of the monitoring and verification from OSCE. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has handled the Council of Russian Federation with a special note protesting against the illegal actions towards Ukrainian citizen Nadia Savchenko. The Council was rejected to ensure the right of Ukrainian Council to meet with the Ukrainian citizen and Russian Federation. The Russian the Ukrainian side insists on liberation of Ukrainian citizens, Savchenko, and political imprisoners like Lysenko. Situation in the Ato area, Ukrainian detachments comply with the ceasefire regime. The terrorists and Russian mercenaries have not stopped shelling of Ukrainian positions. The Russians continue redislocation. During the last day, the shelling in some settlements was done. The Russian intelligence continues to undertake intelligence in order to clarify their positions. During the last day, there were no violations of the border and no shelling from Russian border. The violations of the air space also was not discovered. The operation proves that leaders of DNR and LNR tried to preserve the military machinery because they expect that Russian Federation will stop its supplies. Russian commander requires to ensure repairs and overhaul of the existing machinery. Situation in ATO, Ukrainian law enforcement agencies continuous investigation of the massacre and crimes against peaceful population. They have liquidated the group of terrorists who tortured and murdered local residents. Among their victims, there are 5 local Ukrainian businessmen whose property was confiscated. Those people were kidnapped, tortured, and then murdered by terrorists. Also, the same team simply slain the weak people like disabled people, beggars, etc. The main investigation department of the law enforcement agency continues to investigation as to mass crimes in Slavyansk. For example, they exhumated 14 bodies which were buried in mid-June. These were people, believers of the local Protestant church who were kidnapped, tortured, and killed by Girkin terrorists. Also, on the territories occupied by territorial, the criminal situation is strengthening, and there is continuous combat between different teams of terrorists. In Antratsit, there are military attacks between the representatives of different criminal teams. The local population is requested to be very attentive and keep in mind that those bandits are not controlled. Yesterday in Inakiyevo, in DNR, the imprisoners from prison number 52 were liberated. 20 prisoners, and our information shows that neither of the 20 did not take arms, and out of 106 prisoners, almost everybody came back to the prison. In Donetsk, in some districts, the communal services managed to resume electric supplies in Leninsky, Kievsky, and central part of Kalininsk area. In results of shelling, There is no electricity supply in Petrovsky Rayon, in around Abakumova mine and Lidievka mine in Kuybashevsky district. In order to discover the adversary and intelligence groups, the National Guards and security service carry out operative actions around Mariupol and neighboring regions. Due to the bad weather conditions, the National Guard servicemen and ATO servicemen are supplied with winter clothes. I'm a resident of the Kharkiv Oblast. I met one of my acquaintance from Moscow, whom I first met in the inter-Ukrainian meetings. When we met for the second time, he mentioned that in Moscow there are very influential people who are able to pay rather good money. They are close to the Kremlin elite, and they are ready to pay good money for the adversary actions, like put Russian or Novo-Russian flags in the city, organize public rallies against Ukrainians. They are not interested in the actual topics of these meetings. This could be low wages or any type anti-Ukrainian protest to demonstrate that people are discontent with the Ukrainian authorities. For public demonstration and hanging of flag, of Russian flag, I was promised to be paid 10,000 hryvnia. Then the same my acquaintance Vitaly Tikhanov suggested me to put two flags of Novorossiya in Dnipropetrovsk, and he promised to pay me 20,000 hryvnia. And as far as I understood from his words, that this operation was financed by the Russian FSB. At that time, I was in a big need of money, and I agreed to do this. I understand that in the time of warfare between Russia and Ukraine, this is an adversary activity, and actually, this was an undermining activity against my country, and now I advise everybody not to do such actions, because this money are not worthy of it. In result of these operations, the SBU in Kharkiv have detained representatives of two adversary actions whose main objective was to organize adversary acts and terrorist acts in Ukrainian cities. They were funded by special services of Russian Federation. They were preparing adversary and terrorist acts in the public buildings and in industrial enterprises. If you would like to get a copy of this video, you are welcome. During the last day, the services, the pyrotechnic services of state service on extraordinary situations have discovered and neutralized 187 items of explosive ordnance, and they tested the territory of 21.5 hectares from the very beginning of their work in July. They revealed and neutralized 19,509 units of explosive ordnance, and Also, the same detachments have checked and tested more than 889 administrative buildings and other buildings, and examined 1,156.5 hectares of territories. The main Yesterday, the UN agency have provided a special load with high technological materials for overhaul and reconstruction of the damaged buildings. These construction materials will be used to ensure the most urgent needs. It will allow to build up around 1,000 different premises within 2-3 days, and the top priority area for construction will be in Slavyansk, Semeniv, and Krasny Liman. The United States has allocated $25 million to support Ukraine. This figure is mentioned in the memorandum of the U.S. $5 million is allocated for training of Ukrainian servicemen and military support to Ukrainian government. Also, the non-lethal assistance is envisaged to other ministries and agencies. President of the USA, Barack Obama, in his speech in the General Assembly of United Nations, mentioned that Russian aggression became a challenge to the global order, and that Moscow have deployed the its troops over the border of the neighboring country. It supplied weapons and supported separatism, which is a threat to the global order after the Second World War, and Russia will pay a high price for it. Also, a group of American senators requested that the Ministry of Finance of USA should switch off the SWIFT international wire transfer system for Russian banks. Newly elected General Secretary of NATO, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, have emphasized that conflict settlement in Ukraine will become the top priority for him, and he also underscored that coming back to the old format of relations between NATO and Russia is not on the agenda. The head of EU representative, Mr. Tambinsky, mentioned that in March and April, the European Union was not ready for the sanctions against Russia, but at the same time, the latest events have changed the position of many European countries, including Germany and France, and actually Kremlin has become an aggressor. President of Lithuania, Ms. Grybauskaitė, mentioned that the situation in Ukraine is worsening. Russian forces continue to arrive in Ukraine, and actually the European countries allowed Russia to bring its troops on the neighboring territory and support terrorists. Actually, Russia terrorizes its neighbors and uses the methods applied by terrorists. Any questions? Serhiy Barba, could you please describe the situation in the Donetsk airport? As far as I know, there is active combat around it. I'm not ready to answer this question at the moment, but as far as I know, the situation is very tough all the time. Родина Ukraine TV channel. What is the situation close to Odessa? There was a checkpoint which was shelled there. We will check the information about shelling of shelling of checkpoint, and we will either confirm or deny it. STB TV channel. Terrorists with weapons are chasing around Debaltseve and lost their way. They were trying to bring weapons to Debaltseve, but they lost their way and occasionally got onto Ukrainian checkpoint. And as of the moment, I cannot confirm this information, and we can still wait for the confirmation of this information. The next National Security and Defense Council meeting will be tomorrow at 12:30, and our next briefing will be in September.